My friend, Jade Bryce, is in the house. And, you gave me one of the most glorious intros. I typically do the intros after, but I just want to say you were the first friend of Natasha's and mine that I had when we came here to Austin.
Yeah.
And right when I got off the plane for my interview with Onnit, you took me out. You picked me up from the airport and took me out to dinner, I think on Rainey Street. We went to an Indian cuisine joint.
Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal. Yeah, it was fire. It was so good.
Garage Mahal.
Yeah. Garage Mahal. Yeah, it was great. And Rainey Street, for people that haven't been here, is like a bunch of old houses that got converted into businesses. Pretty cool spot. But that's one of my fondest memories of coming here, was just feeling all the love coming into Austin and feeling like, oh, okay, we're not all alone. We got some people here we can hang with and vibe with. And
it's funny because before your intro, I talked about that dinner because it was so beautiful that in the middle of a downtown crowded restaurant, this 200-pound, could be a scary looking dude cried when he talked about his last ceremony and his wife. And it meant so much to me that you were so open and vulnerable. And I remember telling people that next day that like for 3 days, I felt like I had just had a little mini vacation because it was so refreshing to just sit with you and you be so open. And like, I felt so seen by you too. And so that was like one of the first times that I realized how different my relationship was with you and Tasha than it was with some other people. And that was when I really wanted to cultivate more of that in my life. So that was I remember that night really well because it was a really pivotal night for me too. So
yeah, thank you. Well, I cry a lot, I'm sure. Yeah, I totally forgot about that till you brought it up. I do cry a lot. Well, let's get started here. I want to talk a bit about what life was like growing up for you. I know you had it pretty rough, and you've transitioned beautifully into the person that you are today. So I want to go through the arc of that scope and see what the tools have been that got you out of trouble. But let's talk about growing up.
Okay. So both of my parents had some unhealthy addictions. They had me when they were teenagers. And, like you say about your parents, they were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had. But it definitely was a rough time for me and my siblings. My birth dad was very violent. One of my earliest memories is him chasing me with a hammer, and I jumped off our 3rd-story patio. So I was like maybe 3. And my mom he's the same person now, still drug addicted, still not in a good place. I think that he's like a sexual predator even. So there's like no way, even though I've forgiven him in my heart, there's no way I can allow him in my life. My mom, on the other hand, is completely changed now. She's done a lot of counseling. She takes medicine. And although I wish it was a natural medicine, it at least gets her to where she is able to be, part of my kid's life and things like that. But she did some really inhumane, just non-human things when I was a kid also. And a lot of dark memories there as well. I think that ceremonies have helped me a lot. What's crazy though is I thought that my childhood was really dark and really hard until I had a ceremony that was dark. And I was like, this is the worst night of my entire life. But yeah, I think that when I was around 10, I started running away from home. I was being sexually molested by some cousins and verbally and physically abused by parents. So I started running away from home at 10, also trying to commit suicide at that age, and luckily never succeeded. But it's really odd that I didn't. Obviously, there was a plan, Around 14, I stopped going to school and started living in my car. I at 14 was driving a little Ford Festiva. Literally 2 guys could pick it up and hide it from me because it was so small. But started living in my car. I was working full time at 14 and continued in that for a couple of years. And it was just a very hopeless and empty life. I didn't feel like I had anyone to love. I didn't feel like I had anyone that loved me. I actually was hoping to get pregnant just so that I had someone to have that relationship with. And around my 16th birthday, I was just so depressed and didn't know what I felt about God, didn't know what I felt about a higher being, but I started to just cry out for help. because I started to realize I was becoming just like my parents. I was staying high all day long, waitressing, throwing newspapers, and had no family. So I started to cry out for help. And after, crying can be so cleansing, so after a couple hours of crying, just that alone was really cleansing. But I started to feel a really just pure peace. And even though I don't know exactly what that was, that was a very big moment for me, because that's when I realized this is what I want to live in, not in the darkness and the anxiety. And so that's when I started to try to find mentors, and I started going to like youth camps, and I enrolled myself in the Youth Homeless Association so that I could finish school. And yeah, from then on out, I took a different path. And I'm really glad, because there's other family members that stayed on that path and they're still struggling. So
Yeah. It's always hard as we grow out of our own shells and become different people to witness those that are still trapped in their own demons. We had Alan Stein Jr. on the podcast, and he talked about a quote he had heard from Frank Shamrock. And I don't even think it's from Frank. I'm actually in disbelief it's from Frank. All the love to Frank Shamrock. But he said, everybody needs a plus, an equal, and a minus in their life. The minus is the person you teach, so you get the role of the plus. The equal is the person you see eye to eye with, and the plus is the person who mentors you. Talk about your mentorship with Tom and what it's meant for you.
Yeah, so there were a couple of people in my life actually that made me feel seen after turning that point in my life, that just said, "You're different. You're going to be somebody. You're going to make a difference." And one of them was a youth pastor, right around then, around 16. When I was 23, and that guy was really key in my life also. But when I was 23, I went to the White House to petition and, protest having Joseph Kony arrested on the kind of war crimes. He was the one that led the LRA in Uganda and was forcing all these thousands of child soldiers to kill their own families and things like that. So we were trying to get Joseph Kony arrested. That's where I met Tom. And we didn't, really hang out. We just met. And I just remembered for years, I remembered that guy being something, he was going to change the world. I remember just feeling that about him and really hoping to be like him, really. And a couple years later is when I moved to LA. This guy, Ben, asked if I wanted to go to his friend Tom's house. Had no idea it was the same Tom. And so we're, we go and we're making s'mores on his patio. And it was instant for both of us. We just both felt like we must have been family members or best friends in another life, because it was an immediate connection. And Tom still laughs that I was taking notes while just talking to him, because he has that effect on you. You're like, I don't want to forget this. Everything you're saying is so important. And what he felt, though, about that was that I was a truth seeker, that I was really wanting to grow because I was trying to take notes on a conversation with him. And I just felt like, this is who I want to be. This is my goal, is what this man has. And so it was a really deep connection from that night forward. And we started to be breakup buddies. We started to spend a lot of time together on holidays. And because we're both kind of the same when it comes to, I guess we're not necessarily extroverts. We're not the type to go out, be super duper social, but we want to sit and have those really important, deep conversations. Neither of us are big small talkers. And so we ended up spending a lot of time together, a lot of writing periods in Telluride, and a lot of trips. And his mentorship and his relationship has really shaped who I am today, because he's always seen me for who I want to be. He already sees me as that. And he's always asked me, his key question in my life has always been, do you want to live in fear or do you want to live in love? Which one are you going to choose? And really, when I think about that, it's always been the deciding factor in whether or not I'm going to stay in that relationship or stay in that job. Or, you think about it, it's always comes down to fear or love, right?
Yeah.
And love always wins if you listen. So him asking me that question all the time, and just being that person that sees me and believes in me. I think when you have that, especially when you come from a broken childhood, when you have that one person, it makes all the difference. But I really made space. I think at that time in my life, I had really made space for someone like Tom and was really trying to manifest that person in my life. And I think that I know you have that, you and Aubrey have that with each other. I think that a lot of us, when we don't have that, it's evident, So if we can just make space and even maybe put on paper what we want in a mentor, what we want in that friendship, it comes along. So
yeah, I think that's really important for people to do that, just to iron out the details of what you want in a friend, or what you want in a mentor, or what you want in a relationship. All those things are critical. And then it's not like The Secret, you wish it and it just happens. But I mean, you got to go out and do the work and work for the thing. And all relationships take effort from both parties, but shit has a way of finding you. It just has a way of showing up in your life. And for those that don't know, Tom Shadyac did the original Ace Ventura Pet Detective. He directed Liar Liar. He directed a ton
Nutty Professor,
of great, Nutty Professor. Just amazing.
Most importantly, movies. I Am.
Most importantly, the documentary I Am, which I highly recommend. We're going to link to that in the show notes. Highly recommend people watch that. And if you have already seen it, watch it again, because it is just fucking spot on.
And he raises the bar for how we all should live, And I think that having someone in your life that you can look up to, first of all, you look up to them because what you're seeing in them is also in you, and they're just reflecting that back to you. And I think that when there's that maybe cheesy or cliche saying that you become like the people you spend the most time with, So if you think about that, like, who do you want to become, and then surround yourself with that? I'm very, very blessed to be able to be around Natasha a couple times a week. I think that she really benefits me in who I want to be as a mother, who I want to be as a wife, and just as a woman who's unapologetically herself. When you're around Tasha, she's Tasha. She's not being anyone else.
Yeah, she's not forcing herself into, some type of cookie cutter version of herself to please people. She's herself. And if you love her for who she is. If you don't, then she's fucking...
then you're missing out.
Yeah, you're missing out. And she's not afraid to tell you about it.
And Bear's already that way.
Bear's for sure that way. Talk a bit about when you got started with plant medicines and how that path has started to shape you as a person.
So you and Tasha are really who started that journey for me. And I think that's one of the reasons also why I feel like for the rest of my life, I'm going to be connected to you guys, because that's changed the rest of my life is doing plant medicines. And even if I had only done the first few, my life would still be forever changed. But I have my 14th one coming up in 2 weeks.
With ayahuasca?
Okay. Yeah. And so a few things that it's done for me. It's, as a woman who, I don't know if Tasha went through the same thing, but as a woman who had 2 pregnancies back to back and both were C-sections, and the hormonal cycle that you go through with all that, there was a part of me that started to not appreciate my body and what it had done, and instead was judging my body and how different it was from before. And ayahuasca has really helped me to see myself as beautiful and as sexy. And every ceremony, I become this red fox, and Japanese red fox. And it's like, it sounds so, I know you understand, but it sounds so weird. But like when you're touching yourself during a ceremony, you're like feeling the fur and not your skin, And it was just, it's so soft. And the Japanese red fox is so coy and playful and sexy. And each time I'm that red fox in ceremony, I become a little bit more of that afterwards.
There's an embodiment. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said the other day, it's also an awareness, like, okay, well, it's not a snap of the fingers. There's homework to be done, but there's an awareness after, and you realize, okay, I don't want to live this way. I want to live this way. And it's not like all of a sudden you're doing that, but you're aware of it. So you're making progress each day, So yeah, the red fox, which I always thought that my spirit animal would be an elephant because I've always been really drawn to them. But it's weird how much that Japanese red fox has become really like a part of me. And so there's that. And then, just so much ancestral work, so much healing. There's been times when, I just wanted to become more of my inner shaman, and it would take me places to try to cultivate more of my masculine energy instead of seeking that from outside myself, which I've always done. A bird always comes up. I'm always, in my last relationship, I was called, my pet name was Bird. So there's been times when I felt like a watered down version of myself, and I'm a bird with my wings clipped. And something that's so key in my ceremonies is that the shaman provides the right container. He's so in tune with my needs. Without me telling him I'm a bird with clipped wings, he'll come over with bird feathers and like remove those clips, And so another time I was mourning some pain from these last couple of years, and he came and put a bunch of tissues in my hand and for me to cry into, but I thought it was a dead dove. And I was like, how could he, when he sees how much pain I'm
pretty
in?
Pretty bird.
Yeah. That's
Little
funny.
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. So, without him knowing that I've been called Bird all this time and that I'm mourning this, and then he puts this tissue in my hand and I think it's a dead dove. There was like the next day you always realize like, oh man, it all makes sense now, So each ceremony has played such a different healing in my life. I have not gone anywhere with my birth dad yet. I'm sure that's going to be a really, really hard ceremony. I haven't asked for it yet. And I know, Aya is so gentle at times.
Not all the time.
There's been times when I can feel it getting really dark, and I'll ask her like, oh, I'm not ready. Can we please go another direction? And we go another direction. I haven't been in the place where I see my birth dad yet. So I'm really curious how that's going to go, because I'm sure that's going to make it might come this month, because this month my intention is to deal with my codependency on alcoholics in my life because of my upbringing. And that's all going to probably be based off my birth father. I think that in my relationships, I try to heal my wounds with him. So we may go there this month. Not looking forward to it, but of course I'm looking forward to the healing, and I'm open to whatever is going to come. I've only done Huachuma once, but that was also really, really interesting. I felt my heart chakra and my throat chakra merge. And I think I had told you, I was like, yes, I'm going to speak my truth. And then Huachuma was kind of, laughing like, no, you're going to speak in love. And so I realized that with people who drink a lot, there's like a me trying to speak truth to them, me trying to raise them to their potential. And I realized then that it wasn't coming from love; it was coming from judgment of my birth dad. So there was that. But another thing that a big takeaway from Huachuma was that we judge others by their actions and ourselves by our intentions. So through BPI, this is a little woo-woo, but through BPI and through studying under my shaman, I've been able to now see auras on people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when I see an aura on someone or I see their energy, I have to remember to take a step back and remember that may not be what they're wanting me to see. So if they're angry and I'm seeing a darkness over them, I need to take a step back and remember this is from everything that they've gone through. This is their filter of their life and their story. Don't judge them because you're seeing their aura. Like instead be able to come from compassion and that and be there. Like nobody wants you to see a brown or a low functioning,
Yeah, it'd be like if you could read minds like Professor X and you're reading people's minds and they're like, what the fuck? I didn't say anything out loud. Get out of my head. Like Magneto is always like, get out of my head, Charles. You wouldn't want that from people.
It's not fair.
It isn't fair because you don't want to be read, and it's obviously, look, if you've done plant medicines, it's quite likely you've seen auras on people or on yourself or on plants. it's not that woo-woo for people that have kind of gone through a decent amount of those experiences. For people that haven't, the human energy field is very real. And they talk about this in I Am. There's a lot of work being done at the HeartMath Institute in Boulder Creek, where my father lives, California, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where they can see the heart chakra, if you will, or this heart space has an 8-foot range when you're fully radiant, you know, and then that shrinks in anger, guilt, and shame. That how far you touch people shrinks.
Solar plexus,
yeah. And so they're able to see this now. And there's a great book called, I think it's called Infinite Mind by Laurie Hunt, who is a professor at UCLA. And she started studying this. She was a physics professor in the 70s. And they started looking at, you know, she asked her students at the beginning of every semester what they want to learn. And the metaphysical was really coming up at that point. And all the students wanted to learn about the metaphysical. They didn't give a shit about regular physics. So they started looking into this. And I think it was UCLA that made the first large building on campus where they could record the human energy field, or the aura for that matter. And there's tons of these photos in the book. I highly recommend it for people that are like rolling their fucking eyes right now. Maybe we've already lost them. But if you're still with us, Dr. Wayne Dyer recommended that book, and it just blew my fucking mind.
Wow.
How dialed in it was, and really how we can influence that through negative ions from the ocean. That expands us, that makes us feel better. And just lots of various practices, meditation, all these things.
And sometimes we're seeing people's energy. Like, before you realize that you're seeing someone's energy, you see it and you just don't know that that's what you're seeing. You know, before I started doing plant medicine or working under my shaman, I would see an anger on someone, and I would kind of like, you know, react like kind of flinch, and it would be offensive. And I didn't realize until later on doing the work that I was able to see energy.
You walk by somebody and you're like, ugh.
And I think that we're all born with that ability. The thing is we turn it off because it's discredited, or we see our parent in a bad mood and we ask what's wrong, and that nothing's wrong. And so we start to question what we're seeing.
Yeah, for asking that, right?
When I was 3 or 4, I was in the bathroom on the toilet talking to this old lady that I thought was in the bathroom. And my mom called from the living room and said, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "It's your grandma. She said she loves you and she wishes she was here to make tortillas for you." I had no idea, because I was only 3 or 4, that she had just passed away. And my mom was warning her and thinking, I don't know if she ever really loved me, because she was a really hard lady. She grew up in Mexico and, dirt floors, and had to be hard to survive. My mom, when she passed away, my mom was thinking, I don't know if she really loved me. And I also didn't get her recipe for tortillas, and just all these things. And then because of what I said made so much sense to her, and she believed it 100%, she validated it instead of causing me to question it. Yeah. And I think that moments like that in my life, growing up in a couple different religious homes, also when I would see something, because they believed in the spiritual realm, they validated it instead of discredited it. And so I never turned it off, but I wasn't realizing that what I was seeing, other people couldn't see. And I remember one time someone, from what I thought, they were hissing at me. Turns out that wasn't happening. And in that Huachuma ceremony, I realized that, to always just take a step back, take a moment, and ask myself what's really going on, and use that as a way to be able to meet that person where they're at instead of judging them. Nobody wants to be an angry person, So, but yeah, that book sounds amazing. It sounds so woo-woo and so weird to say that you can see the aura and the heart. But it becomes something once you allow yourself, I think once you realize that you have it and you allow it to just be turned on, it becomes so natural for you that you're no longer responding to it in a, like, when I see you sometimes, your energy is always neon. It's always pink or green, and it's neon. But
I like pink.
It's very high functioning. It's yeah. And when I see you, it's or when I see Tasha, it's when you turn that on and you're comfortable with it, it's no longer like something you react to. It's something that you just enjoy about someone, you know? So yeah.
That's cool. And for people that are still rolling their eyes, I mean, there are quite a few circumstances where you're at a party and someone comes into the room and you're like, ugh, I just get fucking creeped out from that guy. Or, you know, that lady really weirds me out. And whatever it is, maybe you don't see anything or hear anything, but you feel it. And that is palpable. And there is that language from heart to heart of us connecting to one another.
Or not.
Exactly. You don't have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's quite a few people, if you really think about it, you'd be like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And something I try to remember with that too is that our subconscious is making up so much of our reactions to people and our judgments to people. Like your subconscious can't differentiate from yesterday or today. So when you see a waitress and she just rubs you in the wrong way, it may be because she walks the same way that some babysitter walked when she was mean to you. And so your subconscious picks up on that, relates her to your mean babysitter, and then you're judging this person and they have nothing to do with why you're feeling the way that you feel, you know? So I try to remember that too, that so much of our subconscious is making up the story in our head.
Yeah. And it's all stories, as we know from our good buddy, Eric Godsey.
Yeah.
His podcast just released today. So yeah, super happy with that. You have two amazing kids, and Soul is fairly close to Bear's age. That's also Bear's middle name, Soul, after the son.
Yeah.
And you have Jaya, your beautiful daughter. So you got a boy and a girl. Talk about what it's been like raising them and what you've learned along the way.
Oh man, they have been my greatest teachers. It's crazy because something I've asked for a decade now is patience. I'm always asking for patience. And I just feel the universe laugh now because they're throwing tantrums and the universe is like, you asked for patience. Like they're your greatest teachers in patience. And Soul, I have a deep connection with both of them, but Soul has appeared in every ceremony. I've merged into him in every ceremony. I've merged into Jaya a couple of times and she's very sassy and just the cool girl, you know. Soul, though, he, on my first ceremony, told me to make sure to never squelch his, I don't know if squelch is the right word, but to never like squelch his goofiness and his funny side, because he's going to be a leader who heals people through comedy. I don't know if that's someone like Ellen or someone like Tom or Bill Murray. It's his middle name is Murray after Bill Murray, actually. But I don't know, but I know that was a really cool moment for me because all I've wanted to do with my life is heal others. So to think that, you know, that desire is going to continue on with your children, you know. So Soul, also, he just says things that are so mystical sometimes, like, he's so spiritually mature and he sings Sanskrit songs before he goes to bed, you know, like he's been such a teacher for me. And, even like there was one day when I was like he woke up way too early and I said, Soul, it is way too early. The sun's not even awake yet. And he said, Mom, I am the sun. You're the sun. We're the light. Like he just says things like that when you're like, you're 3, you know? But yeah, they've both been my teachers in everything. And parenting is really freaking hard. But if I can recommend any book to parents, The Conscious Parent has really shaped the way that I deal with them and the way I see them as they're their own people on their own path. And so many times I feel like we try to mold our kids into who we want them to be and who we want them to turn out to be, because it's ego. They're a reflection of me, you know, around other people. But if you can just remember that they're their own beings and all that we are here to do is learn from them and them learn from us, and it be more of a, maybe a coaching and not a correcting. Yeah, it's a two-way street. Yeah. You know, like people have this idea that we're here to teach our kids, and we are to a degree, but we're here to learn just as much as we teach.
And it's exactly what Paul Selig had said to me when I had him tap into to Bear the first time I worked with him. He had the guides tap into Bear, and Selig's been a guest on your show, the MaJic Hour. He's also been a guest a couple of times on the Aubrey Marcus podcast.
I have chills just thinking about him.
He's an amazing guy, but he tapped in and spot on. He was like, you think you have this idea of what you want Bear to turn out to be, but that's not the way. All you need to do is play with him. All you need to do is show him love, and that's your guidance.
That's all I need.
He's going to learn from everybody. He's going to choose his own path, and it has nothing to do with what your plans are. Because I want him to learn music. I want him to learn martial arts. I want him to do all these things because they've been really important and impactful in my life. So those are the things I want to give, because it's like, hey man,
we have dreams for our kids.
Yeah. Like football was great, but jiu-jitsu and wrestling taught me something different about myself. Single sports and martial arts taught me something different than I got from football or basketball. So wanting those for him, it's cute. It's fun to want that, but it really comes down to what he wants for himself, and he's going to learn all his lessons in his own way.
Yeah. And I think something I see you do, and something that I try to do, is get on their level instead of always being above them. Also, like, it's so hard sometimes to not scream back, but think about we're their whole world. So imagine like the person you love the very most, who's way bigger than you, being above you and screaming at you when they're upset, So I think something that I've really learned is to like get down on their level and be able to look right into their eyes makes all the difference when I'm trying to talk to them or calm them down. But something I do every day is I'll get down on my knees so that I'm eye level with them, and I'll look in their eyes and say, I love you and I think you're great. And just doing that, I noticed such a shift in the rest of the evening or the rest of the day, or if they're in a funk and I do that, there's just such a shift, because anytime a child is acting out, that's just them seeking connection, And there was one more thing that I was going to say about soul. My last ceremony. This is something that I think all parents probably struggle with, because back a long time, way back when, we weren't necessarily pursuing other things. We weren't doing podcasts. We weren't passionate about making a difference. Now I feel like all parents, our plates are so full, and we're trying to do so many things and play with our kids and stay present with them. And in my last ceremony, I really, really wanted a healing from my shaman. But I try not to, I always feel like I'm really needy when I'm around people that I know I can learn a lot from. So I know, when I'm around you, I'm like, I have a question, and with my shaman, it's like every time I'm around him, I just want to absorb so much. And I try not to go for a healing first, because I don't want to be the needy one. I want others to be able to go up. But so I always try to go second. But the first healing was taking a really long time, and I guess a mess was made. So then there was cleaning done, and I had transformed into soul at this point. And I was just like, oh my God, I know what he's doing is important about the shaman. I was like, I know what he's doing is important, but I really, really need this healing. And I just feel a lot of emotions right now. And so I was feeling really impatient. And I realized that this is how soul feels when I'm answering emails, or when I'm like, even when the shaman was cleaning up after the last healing, I was like, oh man, I was soul thinking about me. Oh man, she's cleaning now. She's cleaning again. Like, I know everything she's doing is important, but I really, really need her attention. And it just made me realize that everything that they're here for right now is just us. Like, we're their whole world. So staying busy all the time so now I've made a goal of just being in their room. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but staying in their room for 45 minutes every day without any phone, no distraction, and just being present with them and being in there. I think it's different when we go to their rooms, because they feel like we're actually coming in and spending time with them instead of it even just being in the living room,
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to set aside, that we just have so many passions these days, setting aside time each day to just be there with them and let them feel seen, because we're the most important, that we're all that they're here for right now in their minds, So
yeah, and it does go quick. It's funny, because like your first 6 months to a year when you're not getting sleep, you're like, this doesn't go fast at all. Fuck all these old timers that were telling me it goes quickly, and cherish.
And then you look
moment.
back and you're like, dang, it's gone.
Yeah, they're little humans now. They got personalities and demands, and fucking Bear negotiates everything.
Yeah, he does. So does Jaya.
Is barter built into human consciousness?
Yeah.
Like, is that part of the collective consciousness
I know.
of humanity to
Jaya
barter?
and Bear are more alike.
They do it in so many other countries. And here in the US, it's like, this is what you pay for is the fucking sticker price. It is very rare, other than maybe buying a car or a house, where we'll negotiate a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you go to Afghanistan or any of these other third world countries and you just have, it's constant, you know, and even in Peru, when I was down there buying stuff from the Shipibo, we got some art from them and I only had a certain amount of money and the guy kept coming back to me with a little bit less till he finally let me buy the painting for what I had.
Yeah.
It was like, damn, like everything is barter here.
Yeah.
But kids are just, they're so damn funny. I mean, that's one of the messages I keep getting in plant medicines is to not take myself so seriously and to not take life so serious.
I take myself way too damn seriously.
Yeah. And it's like, that's one of the cool things about kids and pets for that matter.
And they teach you to be in the now. Kids are in the now. That's another thing. Like if there is an abusive situation in the home, but the kids still act happy, a lot of times people think they're fine, but that's not the case. It's because they live in the now. And abuse may have happened that morning and then that afternoon they're acting fine. It's because they're living in that moment, you know? And it's so cute to ask a kid, like, what's your favorite part of the day? Or how are you? Because they're so different than we are in their answers. And Jaya has not showed up so much in my ceremonies. Soul, I've seen actually attend ceremonies with me when he's older and like thanking me for bringing him up in that, which was really cool. I haven't seen Jaya in many of them, but I know she's got a high calling on her life. I was going to name her Viva. When I was in Brazil at a meditation ashram for 6 weeks, we were in silence, but on Friday nights we could talk after a documentary and we watched Happy, which later I found out Tom produced. And at the time I hadn't met Tom yet. But I was in such a dark place when I got to that ashram. And when I watched Happy, I was like, that is how we should all be living. Like that's our inner knowing. Like that's what we're really meant to be doing. And the shaman there said, the maker of this documentary, which not Tom, but the actual maker was meant to be here to talk to you guys, but they gave birth to their daughter this week and they named her Viva. And I thought, I'm going to name my daughter Viva so that I always remember this time. So fast forward 4 years later, I'm already hanging out with Tom. New Year's Eve, we're on Malibu Beach around a bonfire. Everyone's sober, but just dancing and enjoying themselves. And there's all these directors and actors there that I look up to. And I just remember thinking like, oh, I finally made it out here to LA. I finally got out of Austin and made it here. And this little girl's pulling on my pants and her mom says, Viva, don't do that. You're going to pull her pants down. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to name my daughter. And I told her why. And she goes, oh, that's my film. And so I was like, yeah, so it was like two key moments in my life where I was enjoying breaking out of darkness or breaking out of a huge, or just having a big breakthrough. And Viva showed up. So Viva means live. And so I was going to name Jaya Viva Karunya, which I know is out there, but it means live compassionately. And her dad was just not having it. And then he was unconscious when I had Jaya. He was on another floor. And so I didn't feel right just choosing my name. Like, sorry, when he wakes up, sorry, I chose my name. So I felt like I had to go with his. So I named her Jaya, but I think her nickname is going to be Viva.
I like that.
Because it's such a big reminder for me. And I've always felt like my daughter was going to be Viva. She was going to be the one that taught people to live compassionately. So I'll tell her that story later and let her decide.
I like that. Well, Jai is a beautiful name too.
Yeah.
So you've been a ring girl, just like Tosh. I think that's how y'all met. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of photographers that worked with both of us were like, you guys are the same. And even I worked with a banquet girl, Vi, who was like, you guys are, I just feel like when I'm around either of y'all, it's pretty much the same thing. So
yeah, and now you have a podcast, the MaJic Hour, with another ring girl, with Mercedes Terrell, and she's still in Bellator. Is that correct?
Yeah, 10 years now.
Damn.
Yeah,
she's an OG. And I wanted to ask you because you guys have started red hot, and it's something that you had talked with me about extensively before starting the podcast, where all the do's and don'ts and what's the best way to set it up and all the typical questions. And one of the things that I mentioned to you was something that I'd learned from Tim Ferriss, who wrote an excellent blog on starting a podcast. He said, your first 5 episodes suck. No matter what, they're going to suck. You'll improve. Just stick with it. most shows don't go past 5 episodes for that very reason.
Our first episode is still like one of our best ones because it's Paul Selig, but...
Well, that's what I was getting at. Like, you guys just came red hot out of the gate, and it's blown me away. You know, I jumped on your podcast last night, and the first thing I told Tosh when she asked how it went was, I was like, they're fucking seasoned.
Really?
Like, really seasoned. And it just blew me away. The flow that you both had, especially doing Skype interviews, which I fucking hate because it's hard to read people. It's hard to know when to interject.
And we know nothing else. So
I've done one interview with the Viome guy, Naveen Jain, and I didn't like how that turned out. I'm sure some people didn't notice, but it drove me fucking crazy. So I was like, that's it. Either they can fly here and we'll pay for it, or they're not coming on the show. Yeah.
It may Skype, at least you can see them, because I've done a few over the phone and you just don't know. There's just
somebody could be rolling their eyes while you're talking. I mean,
and you're not feeding off the energy, right? And I like to be able to look at the person like in the eye. Like, we've had people, I think 3 guests now, like cry during the interview. And imagine if we were just on the phone, you know? So I can imagine being in person, how much better it would be, but this is the best we can do because she lives in California, I live here, and our guests are all over the place. So it is nice that Onnit pays for the guests to fly into town or for me to fly to them. That's a fucking huge perk. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because you've had some really cool people on your show. Who've been your favorite guests, and what are your main takeaways from them?
Oh, we've had a bunch of amazing guests. We've only had one that was just straight up not nice to us. But
you want to blast them right now?
Kind of, but I won't.
You're so gentle.
The thing is it all depends on what that person brings, because like you, I had a really freaking bad day yesterday, and you showing up and being you, it's like all that just went away. Every time I see you and I get a hug from you, it like melts off. So there was no concern of like, oh crap, and I have an episode to record tonight, because I knew it was you. And it, you know, there's been people who've shown up and you can tell they haven't had a very good day. So it's a bummer because you know their potential. So it's hard because you never know what you're going to get. It could be someone you've read their book and they're amazing, but they're not used to podcasting, you know? And so it's been interesting with everyone, but the person for sure, that has just in that one episode alone has really changed my life was Paul Selig, because it's unreal. Like, your conversation with him is just your consciousness is raised in that one. Just listening to his voice, you feel a different frequency, you know? And there's no doubt that what he's saying to you is like, that is from the spiritual realm. Like, that is a guide.
That's the first thing I thought was, I don't know if this guy is actually channeling or not, but what he's saying is fucking spot on, because it just resonates with me. And one of the things he talks about is that as you listen to him speak through Audible or on podcasts, there's an attunement.
There is.
Even if you don't say the things with him, even if you don't say the words with him, there is an attunement in hearing those words. And it's certainly been the case for me. I think for Aubrey and a lot of people, Duncan Trussell, who Aubrey and I first heard him on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. They did a live podcast at the Bell House Theater in Brooklyn. And it was fucking rad. They podcasted for an hour.
Stuff happening in your life when he came in your life that week? Like spiritual type stuff?
Life got harder.
Like at Boulder Psychic Institute, they call it a growth period. You know, like growing pains suck, but you're growing.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's all perception, you know, and that's one of the beautiful things with plant medicines is that you see with new eyes, but it's how you're perceiving it. And Godzi was just on Aubrey Marcus's a 4th time, and they talk about go for your win, but he gives so much credence to the struggle, to whatever resistance you have in your life, because resistance is what makes you stronger. Resistance is the thing that gets brought in from the universe or God or whatever you want to call it.
To wake you up.
Yeah, that's what's going to get you to be the person you can potentially be.
Yeah.
Without that, there is no growth.
And it's like, I always ask myself, do you want the short suffering or the long suffering? You know, like if you're going to resist it, you may not suffer now, but you're going to suffer later. Whereas if you embrace it and you allow it to grow, to face the growing pain, then it's going to be a short suffering. You know, there may be more suffering later in different areas, but it's everything that comes to us, every opposition, every resistance, like Tom says, is God in drag. It's like what it's here to teach you something,
that.
you know, the person even harassing you or saying your podcast sucks, whatever. First of all, they're telling you about them, not you, but they're God in drag. They're here to teach you something, you know? So I love Eric. I know he's says all the same stuff. So we'll probably have him on 4 times.
Yeah, for sure. I'm having him back on. We just released his podcast this week. And even though there's a 6-week waiting period, I want yours to release Friday. So we're going to push this one up and release it before you have your event here this weekend at Onnit to help promote. So tell people about the event you're putting on with like one person that I don't know, but 2 of my absolute favorite people on the planet will be there.
Yes. So this Sunday at Onnit, we're going to do a move with MaJic. First of all, the promo of this has made people a little bit nervous because it's a sober event and you're going to be moving around. And the thought of like dancing around soberly for a lot of people makes them uncomfortable. But what's so great about that is you're getting, what better way to get rid of your ego than to dance in public, you know, and be goofy. And I mean, at your house, you and Tasha are always dancing. So y'all are vets at this. But what I notice in ecstatic dance is that for the first 30 to 45 minutes, I'm judging myself. I'm not aware if I am judging others around me, but I am pretty hard on myself. So I'm judging myself. I'm still getting everything off my shoulders that I've been carrying in there. And then once you hit the 30 or 45 minute mark, if you can stay in it for that long, you start to have a download, and it's almost like a plant medicine ceremony in itself. This last Sunday, I know I'm getting off a little bit, but this last Sunday I went to ecstatic dance in Austin. So if you live in Austin, there's an amazing ecstatic dance community. There's like 250 people just dancing so happily. So Saturday night, I was crying because my heart was in pain. And Sunday morning, I was crying because I was overwhelmed with joy and gratitude, just watching all these people dance freely. And I was just celebrating the fact that I am free. I'm free to dance. And there were people meditating in the corner, people crying in the corner because they were watching what I was watching. And then there were people dancing with these cheesy, big ass grins on their face. And then there were people slow moving with their eyes closed, you know, and it was just, it was ceremonial, you know? And so we're going to be doing that Sunday here with Parangi.
At Onnit.
So what we're going to start with is, it starts at 1:30. There'll be a silent auction because we're trying to raise money for SAFE. There's so much. Texas is the number 1 state for child abuse, and it's got 3 of the top cities for child sex trafficking. So SAFE is based in Austin, and they're trying to put a stop to that. So that's why we chose SAFE. It's something super near and dear to my heart. All the money from the event is going to go towards them. So there'll be a silent auction in the beginning for that. And then we'll have Melody F. Cami. She's got a pretty big following here in Austin for some choreographed dance classes. That's another great way to get rid of your ego, is to take a dance class where you don't know the choreography. And she still, even though you may not learn the moves, you'll still feel like, man, I could be Beyonce's backup dancer when you leave her class, because she's so empowering and she like really makes you feel sexy when you're doing her. I mean, the moves are sexy in itself. So there's that from 2 to 4. And then from 4 to 6, we're going to have Aaron Alexander, which you know, Align podcast. He's going to be leading us in some stretch, some yoga, some breath work. We're going to talk to him. The MaJic Hour podcast is going to talk to him also. And then from 6 to 9, Aubrey's going to talk to Parangi. It was going to be us, but Aubrey stepped in. He's going to do it. And we're honored to have him be a part of the event. And then Parangi's going to lead us in some ecstatic dance with his live music. And Ashley, his partner, is going to guide us in some meditation and journaling. And I'm just super excited because not only are their lives going to be changed that we're donating to it SAFE, but there's no way you're going to come to this event and leave not feeling like your higher self and not feeling like, whew, everything is off my shoulders. And I'm sure there's going to be some tears in there too, because it's just, whether it's from joy or releasing some sadness, because it's just so freaking powerful to dance, you know? And we're encouraging people to come sober. I know some people want to microdose. That's fine. You know, whatever you want to do, but we're not going to be serving alcohol. It's going to be all like tea, and the Onnit Cafe is going to be open. So I really, really encourage you that if you're not in Austin, to find an ecstatic dance community in your city. But if you can come this Sunday, it would be amazing. We'd love to have you. it's for a good cause, and the conversations are going to be, I bet something I love about events like this is you could go up to anyone in the room and have a really good conversation, because that's the people that are drawn to this event, or what we're all trying to gravitate towards. So.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Like-minded people on the growth path.
Yeah.
Well, it has been awesome having you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jade. We will get this one turned around very quickly. That way we can promote the event.
Yeah.
And let us know when my episode drops on your podcast, and we'll help promote that as well.
You're another guest that we're so stoked to have you. I said Paul Selig, but Tom Shadyac, Eric Gotze, Peter is airing this week, and it's about Tantra, and it's freaking amazing.
Ooh.
And he's so hot. So he really gave us a big blessing, because he's so much what we want in a man, like what we want all women to have in their partner. So yeah, those 3 episodes, yours, we want to air as soon as possible too. But yeah, if you Paul Selig, Eric Gotze, Tom Shadyac, and Peter, those 4 are really life-changing. Those are our favorites.
Hell yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, where can people find you online on the social channels and all that good stuff?
So the podcast is at the MaJic Hour, but with a J for Mercedes and Jade. So that's the MaJic Hour podcast on Instagram and Facebook at the MaJic Hour. Me, it's at the Jade Bryce, because Jade Bryce was taken by a 15-year-old English girl. So
hello, governor.
Yeah. So at the Jade Bryce. And we try really hard to answer everybody and interact with everybody. And we actually let them send in questions for, we had a good couple of questions for you.
Yeah, I had some good questions.
Yeah.
One that I hated and one that I really liked.
Yeah.
I got to tell it how it is.
Yeah. No, we're thankful. So.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you. Thank you so much, Jade. I love you.
Thanks for having me. Love you too.